You're watching The Fix with me, Karima Brown. I'm in conversation with women leaders in business, labour and the social justice section or sector on this international, or rather National Women's Day in South Africa. Fatima, let me start with you. Now, of course, there is also femicide rates in South Africa that is among the highest in the world, and we've looked often at, trying to get a criminal justice system to be supportive of women, to not re-victimize them. If you look today on National Women's Day at the criminal justice system, is it still failing South African women, or are the bills that the Justice Minister spoke about a few days ago going to be making a difference?
Karima, definitely there's a failure in our criminal justice system. So the first thing is, I think on a day like this, it is useful to sit back and reflect on the progress we've made. So, and to recognize that that progress came through the hard organization by women for their own rights. The problem has to do with the implementation of that system. So that's the first limitation, that the laws are wonderful, but when it comes to implementation, when that woman actually reaches the police station or the court, we've seen that despite the repeated commitment from government that there will be no bail for rapists, repeatedly we're seeing, very recently, a week ago, an accused rapist let out on bail for 1,000 rand. So we see a disconnect between the political promises made to women in the country and what the system actually delivers. So that's the first point that we have to focus on. The second is that the criminal justice system cannot represent the sum total of our strategy to a gender-based violence crisis of this extreme. That's the end point of what you do with men after they violated women. But clearly the bigger challenge facing South Africa is the prevailing value system in our country that basically doesn't value women as human beings. We see this repeatedly. We see that at leadership level across all sectors, business, government, trade unions, civil society, that there's a fundamental disrespect for the value of women as human beings, and that is what we haven't cracked yet, not in a post-apartheid era. That's where our tensions and our work needs to go going forward.
Zingiswa, let me bring you in here. That is a difficult thing to address because, as Fatima said, you can have the toughest laws in the world. If there is no implementation, you have a problem. But also, if you fill the prisons, you make them places of toxic masculinity where men come out and violate women all over again. What is it that needs to shift fundamentally in the way in which we raise young boys and young girls so that our understanding of who we are as human beings change?
I must agree with Fatima in all what she has articulated. How society is constructed, the gender roles, and I think we need to deconstruct and reconstruct a society that is going to represent what we want to see as the future of our own children going forward. And where we do not have a superiority between boys and girls. Now, how we were brought up in a society that defines your roles and responsibility as soon as you are given birth to, without you having to choose the path that you want to take. And I think we need to deal with that. But secondly, we need to also ensure that in organizations that we belong to, women are not taken as subordinates of men leaders. Women are equal to the task. Women are human beings who have embraced a life, who have nurtured life. So women need to be given their responsibility to act. I mean, today we're celebrating Women's Day, Karima. 1956, women led this march that today we are saying we're standing on the giant of those women, on the shoulders of those women, giant women. Now, we cannot, therefore, during this time, think that to move forward and as we articulate the role that women played in the 1956 and even before, and continue in the same path of expecting women to be subordinate to their male counterparts. I always make this argument, Karima, sorry, that I still want to see a barometer that is being used to test the capacity of a man to that of a woman intellectually, where women are therefore always to be said they must be taken to a particular school where they can be capacitated, and that is not said about men.
Okay, let me talk to Busi here. Often in the corporate world, you have a very masculine culture. When women enter the boardrooms, you are often required to almost mimic male behavior to be taken seriously. You must speak in a firm voice. You must dress in your power suit. You must almost become a caricature and look like a man in a suit. How far have we come in the corporate sector to breaking down that stereotype that to be taken seriously, you have to mimic the behavior of a male?
So we haven't done enough in terms of breaking that stereotype. And I think the main reason for Karima is precisely because there isn't enough women sitting in boardrooms who can advocate for the same things, who can advocate for equality and to ensure that some of the interventions that need to be put in place to allow for the gender agenda are actually implemented. So the biggest problem is what Fatima highlighted, to say that there isn't monitoring and evaluation. So 25 years into democracy, to be sitting in an environment where there's only 4% Black African women in senior executive positions and 20% women, overall, you can see that we are still outnumbered by far. So we still operate in an environment where men are the default when it comes to leadership, and, women are therefore, the anomaly. And I think that is going to have to change. But again, without monitoring and evaluation, without government, ensuring that Employment Equity Act, the BBB Act, and whatever the case is actually observed, companies are actually not going to do what they need to do in as far as this is concerned. So as much as I'm not a fan of over-regulation, Karima, but I believe that conditions for people to prosper are not God-given. They are actually brought in and ushered in through policy interventions. So when policy is weak and when policy is not monitored, we are therefore not going to see the shifts that
Absolutely.
You need to see, especially in the private sector environment, where such issues are still very dismal, as it were.
Okay, Fatima, I'm going to give you the last word. If the starting point is the most important, and if the formative years of any child is the most important, where they learn the most, should it not be that our education system must be fundamentally overhauled so that we don't have boys and girls and whoever else on the gender spectrum coming out with this idea that, patriarchy is the norm? How do we change that? And is that the right point at which we need to make the most important intervention?
Absolutely, Karima. Look, because our education system is in the extreme crisis that it is, we haven't even begun to engage with the education system as the vehicle for value transmission. So if you look at our constitution, it's a world-class constitution, and it embodies all the values that we fought for in the liberation struggle: equality, Ubuntu, it's empowerment for people, but there's no evidence of those values being alive in our country, and that is because we haven't fundamentally considered how you use the education system, the public broadcasting machinery. We've got massive infrastructure in our country. The SNBC, all our radio stations should be platforms where we inculcate the values that lives in our constitution. We haven't done any of that. And of course, then a major site of reproduction of these old patriarchal values are our religious institutions. So we hear the rhetoric coming from some quarters of clergy, but by and large, our churches and our mosques, our synagogues are seamlessly reproducing very misogynistic values. So an important strategy for us going forward is to identify where are the sites where these values are reproduced. And I think we have to step into that. We can't say churches can do their own things, the same for businesses, schools, and media. There has to be a much more interventionist approach, because as women we are literally paying for the lack of intervention with our lives.
All right, on that note, we ended. Thank you so very much to Fatima Shabudin, Zingiswa Losi, and Busi Mavuso for being on that panel. Well, you've had your fix for the week. See you again next Sunday. Thank you so much for watching.